hello again. Welcome to RP-0 America. So here we are in orbit, and I just tried enabling clouds, and it seems to be okay, at least in orbit, so I'm fine with that. We're with our Gemini craft. I also noticed I'm pretty sure Planet Shine isn't working, so I'll have to try to update that at some time. It's just, there's usually a little bit of a blue tinge because it creates kind of a vacuum ambient light and reflected light from the Earth. So that's not currently showing. So I also wanted to say that in the previous video or two, we were getting the craft to orbit, and then we were kind of adjusting the orbit so they had that one point of overlap. Now that's not necessary entirely. Now you could do. I'd like to do that because then all I have to do is wait to get the. I'm fine with doing that kind of pre-planned, complicated stuff to be able to do orbit. To do the rendezvous. But in practice, you just need to have one craft in a lower orbit, one in a higher. They don't need to overlap. The overlap just kind of gives you a personal idea, and me a personal idea of how out of sync they are, and then you get to see these marks showing from the maneuver node, showing from the stock system. But MechJeb's rendezvous information, if you just have one in a lower orbit and the other higher, null out their inclination. That's all you really need to do. And once you've nulled out their relative inclination, just tell it to do home and transfer, and it will kind of sync you up so that it'll tell you one burn that will give you a shared point of approach, and that's honestly in some ways a better way to do it, because then MechJeb and you can do a burn so that the point at which you finally catch up to the other one is the point. If we knew, okay, well, right now I have this point where this is the point, the arc where we want to catch up. But if I knew, okay, well, with our current kind of syncing cycles, a good point to rendezvous would be actually over here. So what I have to do is adjust the height of this orbit, so I have to make an adjustment here. Whereas if my entire orbit was lower than the other orbit, then I could just make a burn over here so that we were meeting up over here, no trouble. Just having one orbit entirely within the other one is also an entirely valid way. It just requires kind of a two-burn solution where you carry out the burn here that creates the rendezvous point over here, and then once you have the rendezvous, you match. I just prefer it this way, but it's definitely more complicated. I just wanted people to know that it's not the kind of complicated way I'm doing it is by no means the best or only way to do so. All right, so we are trailing. We're about to head over the nighttime side of Earth here. I also changed the skybox. Just made it a bit more sparse, just because I saw an option in CCAM, so I said, sure, let's try that out, and I definitely like it a little better. We'll see, I'll probably keep switching that up. Anyway, so we have Gemini in our orbit here, everybody's still alive, and our station, so we're just going to control things from here now. So it's telling us we're currently a bit out of sync, so let's see, rendezvous. I want a little bit of info from both of these. Alright, so make sure I have RCS and everything off. I'm going to ask it to, so align planes. Okay, that must be a really small burn. No trouble. And if I tell it to engage autopilot, it's telling me that in 12 hours we will be able to get rendezvous. So I'm happy with that. 12 hours from now, we've only been in space for a little over 3 hours. So waiting 12 hours for the orbits to sync up isn't too bad. So I feel like that's totally fine. All right, so that's why I had everything off, because it's automatically gonna try to carry that out, and I don't want it to do that. So first I'm gonna set up the align planes maneuver, warp over there, carry that out, and then I'm gonna kind of warp through a few different cycles. And yeah, we're fairly close to being pointed the way we want to be pointed. It's seems like my scrubber may not be on. Oh, I can't see it while we're in. There we go. Start air filter. Yeah, carbon dioxide was building up. We weren't burning lithium hydroxide in order to absorb carbon dioxide. Well, not burning, but consuming. If you've ever seen the square peg round hole situation in Apollo 13, those are the devices, more or less, that we're using. Lithium hydroxide canisters to absorb the carbon dioxide out of the air. All right, so 1 minute now. Let's just get a little bit closer. It's a really small burn, so we can just be just a little bit before it. RCS. Are we pegged? Yeah. Okay. So we're kind of set. So see, it's running away from us because we are, you know, a bit away from it. It's a relatively small change, so let's just get a bit closer. Crank this up, and it's going to run away from us regardless. Just we want to burn until this gets to about 0. There we go. I think I'm happy with that. And if I tell it to align planes, it says 0.4 meters per second. Okay, so let's do that. There. Now it says we're completely aligned. So it's pretty important to get this to, like, you know, right around 0, or else you're going to have a bit of trouble doing your rendezvous. And the closer you can get those to a relative inclination of 0 during the launch of, you know, your second craft, the better. Definitely worth practicing that. All right, so now we're just kind of slowly closing the distance with that, and it says our closest approach will be over here, and at present it's a 5,000 kilometer separation. So let's just warp, and then our craft come around, and it's telling us, oh, let's go a little further. It's telling us the next one. There we go. So they creeped a bit closer. So each orbit we're catching up by about 600 kilometers. So let us warp around another time. Oh, right. Right. I want to do that behind me. Warp already in progress. All right. So I want to catch it 1 or 2 cycles before we actually rendezvous. And sorry, it's following the rear craft, so I want to tell it to, yeah, there we go. Because when I tell it to do this, it's going to tell me to do 1 burn at this point. We're going to get, you know, a bit of a different relative speed, because we're kind of we're catching it elliptically, or in a, you know, we're not matching the other orbit perfectly. So I want to match up a bit more so that so it's synced up a bit more. Anyway, so 9 hours from now, close that. So now let's warp around again. So not too many. So 9 hours. What is that? Another 5 orbits, 4 orbits. Let's do another orbit. That's why it's good to have, you know, at least a couple of days of life support supplies. If you're just sending up, you know, something for a crew rotation like this, you don't need, you know, like more than 2 days or a week of life support supplies. Of course, you might be kind of doing a dual mission where you're sending up the people as well as, let's see, if I adjust right, no, if I adjust lower for this orbit, they will kind of move closer here. So that's 1,500. Oh, come on, let me click and drag. You may be sending up food and supplies for the station as well, so there's nothing wrong with that. So this would be lowering the orbit, and that's a ridiculous lowering, so it's going to be at least another orbit. Okay, so now it's within 800 and some kilometers, so I think that's, let's see, it's more than, yeah, it's just like 1 and change orbits away now. So again, if I add a maneuver to do adjust here, so if I bump myself up just a little bit, bring this orbit closer to the other orbit to make it sync less per round. Okay, so that would be 1,000. Okay. So let's do 1 more orbit and then we'll do that correction. So another thing to think about, well, there's kind of 2 things to try to match. One is, where do you want the rendezvous to happen? Because you get to make that call. Now, if you use remote tech, or you kind of care about that realism, they usually try to do the rendezvous. Oh, right, sorry, I'm lowering my orbit here, which I don't necessarily want to do. Because lowering my orbit, say, you know, is more fuel, say. See, the relative velocity here is going to be a little higher because I'm doing that. So I'm kind of causing myself to have to spend more fuel in the future. Not higher than what you see there, just because they're kind of still in different orbits with that. But say, if I told it to do this, more than, ooh, well that's, yeah, see, now, using this for final approach when you're using the weird method I'm using would not be ideal. Sorry, I keep forgetting to disengage that. All right, so right now they're going to be fairly close. So 100 kilometers, what is our current separation? Our current separation is about 800 and some. So I want to close about half of that, let's say 880. I want to be, close it to about 400 and some in an orbit, so that 2 orbits later we are synced up. So let's see, separation of 400 and some. So then if I create another orbital maneuver, another cycle around, then they will be at the same spot. Okay, so let's carry this maneuver out. So the reason I'm doing this burn so that it will be because I'm trying to set up the initial sync up when they're on the dark side. Because then, kind of as we're moving towards docking, we'll have this entire half a cycle of darkness to do that. So that's my plan. But so it is generally, most aesthetically pleasing to set up your rendezvous for close to the beginning of daytime. So then you have 45 whole orbital minutes to complete your rendezvous and docking. Okay, and let's warp towards that node. It's not a huge burn, 16 meters per second. So let's do it here. So that's the nice thing about this craft with a fairly high acceleration due to the RCS, particularly compared to the station. Just time warp a bit through that. And so as that goes, we'll see these slipping further and further apart. So my idea is I want it to be about half of that. So 880 where we are now. So I want that to be about half. And yeah, see, I am raising my orbit here. I am kind of messing it up a little bit as well. Actually, I probably should have done it over there or something. Okay, so I brought that to about half. Separation about 400. So now, if I were to set up a maneuver, in the future, there we go. So now you can actually see, and I can kind of do this adjustment live, I think. Oh, right, it's telling me, right, okay. So, relative velocity closest approach. See, this is just telling you next cycle. I kind of wish you could tell it to be the closest approach within, say, the 3 or 4 or 5 cycles. Or even just the next, like it's 1 or 2 cycles would be good. All right, because this is telling us that we will be within 93 kilometers and there. So that's kind of where I had wanted to be. It'll just be 2 orbits from now. So I want let's see, so if I pulse forward just a little bit, and I go and I do that, I check add maneuver. So separation 84 kilometers, and then do it again, check add maneuver here, 84, so I've reduced it a bit, and relative speed is 98. Okay, so 82.98. Oops, add maneuver here, 82.98. 82, so they're getting closer and closer, so that's positive. Oh, I'm wandering because I don't have this set. I should probably align back to my prograde. Okay, just another one. All right, and set up this maneuver just so it'll let me see 1 cycle into the future. So separation 23 kilometers 40. Okay, so 2740. A little more, and 2740. Okay, so really close to now. So let's 6 kilometers 27. What does that say? 26. 326. Okay, so now I've kind of blown 326. So I've blown past it a bit, but that's okay. So within 14 kilometers, not too bad. So I'll just reverse do. So that's one disadvantage of the craft I have built. It doesn't have reverse RCS, which is annoying. It has powerful RCS pushing you forwards, but not you can't thrust backwards. Actually, one weird thing I could have done is pop off the cover for kind of the old style docking port here, the one that just docks with a Gina. And that would actually give me a bit of a thrust backwards, but that's just silly. All right, so let's point us backwards and then do a really small pulse like that. And then I think we're done. Then we're gonna cycle around to that orbit. All right, so we are reversed. So let's just make sure we didn't make a huge impact there. So 16, okay, so, and 11, 8, 13, that's pretty good. It's very good. Within 3 kilometers, so like really within 50 is not a bad kind of situation to start. Warp here to start doing kind of close maneuvering. I usually wait till I'm a bit closer. All right, so now it says, there we go, so the next maneuver, so if I tell it to engage autopilot, it's going to tell me to do the next maneuver, yeah, around back next time. Oops. Sorry, I'm just kind of using that to see, okay, so match velocities at closest approach. And yeah, it's telling me to do, basically sync that up because it says 26 meters per second difference. So yeah, actually that's not too bad. Match. So we want to cycle around to about there. Now we're going to follow the craft. So we warp over the cloudy Earth. So where are we now? I have no idea. I don't recognize this body. I'm going to guess that means it's like Southeast Asia. All right, so we are fairly close to our target. Let's see, the target must be above us. Let's just kind of close these. I don't think we really need them anymore. Above us? I don't see it. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to point towards it. We're 8 minutes away. There it is. All right, it is right over by the sun. So 8 minutes away from closest approach, which will be 13 kilometers, and it's going to take a bit to null, to cover this 26 meters per second of delta V. So let's just point towards our actual target. And if you like, you can, as you can see, we're oh, it didn't make an adjustment. So usually when you are kind of doing these RCS pulses, yeah, before your closest approach it is going to have an impact on where your closest approach is. So be careful of that. Make sure that kind of your maneuvers to close speed at closest approach don't kind of have a really negatively substantial effect. And you can do that by kind of pointing away from the target. Kind of try in a little circle around it and see if there's an exact position where it isn't substantially impacting your closest approach. That's what I usually do. Just kind of wobble around that point and watch the number. All right, so 7 minutes. It's a little too long. Let's give it 3 minutes and 2 minutes, sure. All right, well, let's try to null this out as quick as we can. So it's catching up to us and making us stare into the sun. That's non-ideal. All right, and it is just 2 minutes away from that approach. The RCS in this isn't too badly balanced, so I'm going to turn off the SAS. That'll keep us fairly well pointed. All right. Relative velocity at closest approach is decreasing. And yeah, so we are having an impact on that now. Doing most of this maneuver before approach. Now we're starting to wander off a little bit. So one or 2 kilometers is really close, which is, I'm pleased with that approach. So I'm just going to wait until we're a little closer. And this is handy. I'm not sure. Better burn times maybe that shows this. That is handy. But yeah, also you can have that information displayed in a MechJeb or a Kerbal Engineer window, by all means. I just want to get this to, because we don't have very much. There we go. Delta V left to close. So just get a bit closer. So now we're kind of within the same neighborhood. We're in fairly similar orbits. Actually, let's see, Rendezvous planner. So once we've nulled out our velocity, I want to show, what our relative orbits are, because they are still different. The numbers are noticeably different, but we are close enough in sync that they're, well, we can adjust. Did I cross? No, relative velocity closest approach. There we go. So we're pretty much flat now. We're not, our orbits are, it would take 107 days for us to, move a whole one cycle apart from each other, which isn't a huge amount of time. That's, we go through 3 different orbits in every year, say. But our orbits are fairly close. So now we just want to get closer. So, you don't really need to do that for, once you're this close, once you're within, I don't know, like 5 kilometers or something, you can really just kind of point at it for the most part. So its position relative to us and, kind of the adjustments of our orbits and how they're going to change relative to each other over the next half orbit are meaningful. But you'll see that as a relatively minor difference here. And again, showing closest approach is pretty important in my opinion. So that's just kind of a number in the distance. I mean, you can see it here as well, so no point in staring up at the sky when we've got the beautiful Earth underneath us, which is showing us some part of Earth that I don't immediately recognize. All right, so this is 14 kilometers. So let's point, get closer, and burn a bit. So it's actually fairly meaningful to see that out here. It's telling us, okay, so it's saying that in a minute and a half, we will be, separation will be right at the same point and moving 14 kilometers, or 14, oh, sorry, that says if we did the whole burn, of course. This is saying we will be the same separation. See, I got really close, and so now if I do this difference, so when you're close, you're kind of fighting yourself because any velocity difference you have relative to your target is something you're going to have to correct for in the not too distant future. So you want to kind of close in these short, gentle steps. And that's why it's useful to look at this. So it tells me where in my orbit, how many minutes in the future we will be at that closest approach. So we will be within 500 meters over here, which is really good. And then we'll have to wait more or less till we're in the bright, unless I turn on the lights, because I did turn on, oh weird, we've been kind of wobbling around our center of mass. So I'm just doing I want to turn off U, because I find that the RCS for this craft is better balanced when that is off and this is on. Because this is higher in the craft, it sets it with a higher number for flow priority. And so I want to keep, I want this to be full for when we actually deorbit. It's just, but I do want this RCS to run, just pulling fuel from the general tanks. All right, so let's point towards the other craft. So yeah, 10 minutes from now. That's really not long to wait, but that will be as we're going into the dark. All right, and so now I'm just going to use kind of the translational tools to try to decrease closest approach. And I don't necessarily need to have SAS on. SAS will cause the RCS to kind of counteract any rotation, so that's why you'll see that kind of fidget at the end. Okay, 250, sure, and then this maneuver to bring it down more. So yeah, we're going to be really close in just 12 minutes from now. Ideally, when you set up RCS on a craft, you want it so that when you use the translation mode keys, it won't induce a rotation in the craft. All right, so we're going to move into the dark. So let's just look at the beautiful Earth for the last time, because we may be docking in the dark. Whoa, and that guy's just swinging by. I'm going to need to point the other way, of course. So now we're close enough that we can actually see the other craft. And of course, in the dark, you can't see anything. So I don't have lights on this craft. I should have thought of that. Although I don't think I've unlocked anything that would be kind of useful, like the Apollo arms. Pretty much for everything I do, I'm doing with the Gemini. Beyond basic Gemini, I really should have that like Apollo camera arm. So we have now completed what I'd call a rendezvous with the station. We haven't completed the docking yet, but we've completed rendezvous. So I think I'm going to carry out the docking in the sunlight, and this video is kind of approaching my normal video length, so I think I'll be ending it shortly, and we'll complete the docking in another video. There we are, and I might, for the additional challenge, we'll see, and don't call me on it if I don't do it this way, but I might leave the station as the passive partner rather than have it point towards us. So then I have to maneuver to that position in front of it, which will be a bit more challenging. But really, if you have two active craft, like I could switch over here, I can say control from here, obviously, and then tell it to point, where is there, there's the station, make this, make this my target, and then I could just have the station point that way. That's totally a way to save yourself time and energy. That's the way I do it 99% of the time. Just for additional challenge, because right now I'm on the dark side, I might, to kind of fill some time. Is that the moon? It might be the moon. Have that maneuver in onto this side of the craft. But I will turn on the lights. There we go. We have docking lights here. All right. So this has been another episode of RP-0 America, as we have brought our first crewed capsule with these two new astronauts, freshly minted astronauts, into a rendezvous with our station. And next video we will be docking. So we'll be controlling from here. So that completely reverses things. And I'll also be using the Navy fish docking indicator, because that should help me to kind of do the weird type of docking I'm doing. So I look forward to that. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.